Hello guys, Omni here. I just got back from seeing Doctor Sleep, and before we jump into the review, I do have to kind of commend this movie for going with the straight book title and not adding like a subtitle or a pre-title or anything like that. I'm honestly surprised that there's not even a slogan. There's nothing about this marketing-wise aside from some visual homages in the trailers to its connection to The Shining that lets people know this is a sequel to The Shining, because anyone I've talked to about this movie, about movies I was looking forward to seeing later in this year, anytime I've mentioned Doctor Sleep to people in my social circles, anybody I know at work, they've always been like, "Oh, what's that movie?" And I'm like, "The sequel to The Shining." And the response has always been, "There's a sequel to The Shining?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there is." I feel like that might be the general response to this, and the star power alone for Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson, even like recently the director Mike Flanagan and his success here with Haunting of Hill House, maybe that'll be enough to get other people into it that might not be aware that this is a sequel to a Stephen King novel, which is itself a novel. I haven't read it, so I don't know what the direct comparisons are to this between the book version of Doctor Sleep and the film version. I know that the film itself is both a sequel to the Shining book and the Shining movie, which was directed by Stanley Kubrick. So there's going to be some parallels between that carries through, because this wanted to both continue and pick up where we find Danny Torrance many years later after the events of The Shining. But those events were pretty different between the book version of the movie and the film. But not going into that, we're talking about Doctor Sleep today. And I gotta say that surprisingly enough, this movie, I think it had some expectations to live up to going into it because of that connection to The Shining. And this movie really delivered a whole other experience while also really playing within that world and that like lore that we've had set up, and the characters. Following up with Danny all these years later and see how the events of The Shining has really shaped his life, and having this gift that he has is really great. And Ewan McGregor really plays all these different layers of this character extremely well. There's some times where I was like a little bit iffy on his like American accent, but aside from that, it was really solid. I love Ewan McGregor as an actor, and that was already a selling point for me for this film. So maybe that'll be the case for some other people as well. The villain of this movie, Rose the Hat, played by Rebecca Ferguson, is a really fantastic, fun little villain that is sadistic, evil, and just really well developed. Her core community that we follow, I'm not going to go into any spoilers or anything like that, but this movie builds up its villain, and you really understand their kind of their motivations, and she is a threat, and they go hard as why she's a threat. There's a moment in this movie that is just honestly extremely just too real, too visceral. This is something that probably just happens out there every day, and they linger on it. They live in it for so much longer than I thought they were going to, and it's uncomfortable. And I'm going to say that the actor involved was in a comedy not too long ago, only a couple months ago, this young actor, and they're not even like headlining this movie, but their performance and their scene in this is just so real, it makes it so uncomfortable to watch. Holy crap. If you've seen the movie, you probably know the scene I'm talking about. There's not really any others that stands out too much in that kind of way, in that kind of graphic, messed up kind of way. The other child actor in this movie, Kylie Curran, I hope I'm saying that correct. She does a really good job in this. There's some times where I personally would have liked a little bit of more emotion out of her, but aside from that, she does a stellar job. As far as younger actors go, especially, it just seems like they're getting better. There used to be like this stigma over casting young actors and actresses and stuff in movies, and always kind of like this judgment that comes down on them. They're never, but I feel like as an art, and maybe even as like a culture today, it just seems like we're breeding more very talented young actors and actresses, to definitely be evidenced by like the full cast of the first It Chapter 1 here recently were all stellar across the board, and even the people in Stranger Things, the kids in Stranger Things, are really good. It just seems like it's not that bad to be a kid actor anymore. It's not like this cheesy thing. We got some real heart, emotion, and just edge to like these child actors these days. There's still like the occasional hit or miss, but here for some of these bigger movies, stuff like this, I feel like they've been really doing some great jobs. Now, this movie isn't like action packed. It's not packed to the brim with jump scares. This is a slow, methodical, tone based movie that is really well paced. It takes a long time for things to really build up and build into the climax. But sprinkled through in, there's like just some really small things. There's not a whole lot of like what you would call conventional horror for what you would think of horror these days, but there's a lot of character building in this. There's a lot of world building in this, and we're really going through like a journey with these characters and seeing them evolve, grow, and how they react to all of these things going on around them. And I think that's the most astounding thing about this movie. And at the same time, the most terrifying part of this movie is seeing how everybody's dealing with these. There's some raw emotion in this, honestly, that is just really intense at times. And, you know, even though there's not like a jump scare or something creepy happening all the time, there's always a looming sense of kind of threat and dread and just tension throughout this film that is really appreciated. There's a lot of supporting cast performances in this that is really good as well, that just really stand out. Now, the whole Shining aspect of this movie is I feel, fairly minimal. It's not going to be like a complete fan servicey, shoved in your face kind of, this is the sequel to the Shining thing throughout this movie. So it's never not part of the story whenever it does show up. So be comforted by that at least. Now, this movie is paced well, it is edited well, it is directed well. There's a lot of fantastic, interesting shots and plays with effects and stuff that makes this movie really interesting to watch visually. They do a lot of interesting things with the camera work, with the framing. Now, I haven't seen too many of Mike Flanagan's works. I haven't watched Haunting a Hill House. I think the only other film of his that I've seen is Oculus. And honestly, that movie, I saw it one time in theaters and I haven't seen it since then, but it did like leave an impact on me. The handling of the characters and really the emotional through point of that. And I think he really, from what I've heard and what I've seen in this, I have to say he knows how to handle and motivate and deliver developed, interesting and compelling characters and character arcs that I just find amazing to watch and go through and journey along with for this. This movie was fantastic. And, you know, speaking of the effects and the direction of this, you know, a common thing today, of course, is, you know, de-aging. But I do have to give this movie some kind of credit here because when they had the opportunity to do these kind of flashbacks to Danny Torrance's past, where we see his mother, where we see his father, see his younger self, that there was I'm sure there was a temptation to try to do like some kind of de-aging effect on there, but they went the old school route and they cast people that looked very close, probably as close as you can get for such distinct faces in cinema to match up with their younger selves. And I got to commend them at least for that. I really like this movie, and rating it, I would have to give this a solid A. Now, I don't think all of the current horror fans out there might even consider this a horror movie to the T, but I love it. I like horror movies that are about characters, that are about the characters you're watching, not about getting them killed. I like movies that are about building the characters, about going on a journey and caring about the people that are on the screen. This movie does that, delivers it. It is not hapless. It does not rely on fan service, and it's just a good watch. If you're a fan of these actors, actresses, the story, the original film, even if you haven't seen the original film, I think you can go into this and watch it and completely understand everything throughout and get just as much of enjoyment out of this movie. So I recommend this movie wholeheartedly. Go check it out. And that's it. So I want to know your guys' thoughts. If any of you have seen it so far by now, go ahead and sound off in the comments. What did you think of the movie? What is your thoughts and opinions, your relationship with The Shining, with Stephen King? Let's just talk about all that in the comments down below after the video, and we can carry on this conversation there. But that is it for today, guys. If you liked the video, make sure to support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you didn't like it, Let me know in the comments what you didn't like, but thank you guys. Really appreciate everybody watching, everybody hanging out, everybody subscribing, commenting, liking, everything like that. You guys are great. You're making this channel grow, and I really appreciate you all. Thank you all for stopping in, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care, everybody.